NASCAR drivers past and present have some strong opinions on the Bubba Wallace-Kyle Larson incident, and Truck Series driver Lawless Alan joins us in the second half of today's show. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. Full show ahead. Again, Truck Series driver Lawless Alan will join us near the end. He'll give us the view from the driver's seat going into a competitive weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. Thanks to Auto Charge It for making that possible. But first, we have to cover the Bubba Wallace suspension one final time. It's been a couple days since NASCAR handed out their ruling, and since then, it's been pretty interesting to see many current Cup Series stars and former Cup Series drivers weigh in. One of the first drivers I saw was Kevin Harvick, who put out two tweets just after the Bubba Wallace suspension was confirmed. His first tweet: "Intentionally hooking people in the right rear should never be acceptable. Protect us from ourselves. I hope this is the beginning of the end of it happening." Then, one Twitter user made the comment that, well, retirement's the only thing that'll keep you safe. Have you seen these kids in the lower series? And Harvick replied, "I've been guilty of several of these instances you see happening, but I also had an iron fist of Mike Helton waiting for me after I acted like a fool. I believe an iron fist is needed going forward, and that will trickle down. Hashtag no hacks, hashtag race right." Interesting point from Harvick there. I don't know if this is true, but when I was growing up watching NASCAR in the mid-2000s, even the 2010s, the era Kevin Harvick has raced in, I feel like NASCAR leadership, for better or worse in some cases, was far more confrontational. If you did something dumb on the racetrack, you're going to the NASCAR hauler, you're going to go face-to-face, toe-to-toe with Mike Helton, and he was going to chew you out. He or someone else was going to put the fear of God into you. Mike Helton was on Corey LaJoie's podcast just last week, sort of slyly talking about some of the infamous hauler stories back in the day. Again, I may be wrong, but I don't feel like that's as common nowadays. I feel like NASCAR's current core group of leadership is less confrontational. For one, they're not fining all these drivers for speaking out against the next gen and safety. Bubba Wallace was not called to the hauler after wrecking Kyle Larson and their physical altercation afterwards. Harvick may be onto something. Maybe NASCAR does need to embrace some of that old school tough guy, hey, it's my way or the highway, some of that mentality once again if they want to get these younger drivers steered back straight. Maybe he's wrong, but I thought it was an interesting thought that was worth sharing, worth amplifying. Next driver. Many of you have probably already seen or heard these comments from Joey Logano during his weekly segment on Sirius XM NASCAR radio.
But right rear hooking someone in the dog leg is not okay. Like, that could have been, I don't know if everyone realizes how bad that could have been. That could have been the end of Kyle Larson's career. That to me was what was on the line. Or his life.
I've already addressed this topic this week, but I don't believe Joey Logano is over-exaggerating too much. Alex Bowman lightly backed into the fence at Texas, and he may be out for the season due to a head injury. Kurt Busch hit the wall at Pocono. He's out for the year and just announced his retirement, likely a year earlier than he would have otherwise. 2 or 3 years ago, those comments from Joey Logano may have been seen as slightly melodramatic. Not in 2022, not with what we've seen this year in the next gen car, and I mentioned this, I think, a Sunday night actually. But Bubba Wallace losing his head in that moment and choosing to right rear Kyle Larson looks even worse when you consider he sat in 2 safety meetings in the past week with all the other drivers with NASCAR, where safety and collaboration have been the words of the day. It's just the timing, to steal RCR's statement, couldn't have been worse. So Joey Logano with some strong words there earlier this week, but I don't think they're too strong. I think they're fairly well in line. Next, and I didn't hear this, but I've read the transcript since, Dale Earnhardt Jr. was also on Sirius XM. He appeared this week on the Mad Dog Sports Radio channel and had this to say after Bubba Wallace's suspension had been handed down. "A lot of people thought that this was the right choice. I wouldn't have made it. I don't hate it. I don't hate the suspension, but I probably would have went with the precedent because that is something NASCAR has used time and time again. The other thing too, if they were trying to send a message, I felt like the points would have really got there this time. If you hit them with an owner's points penalty, that would have absolutely got the message to team, driver, and everybody involved. Bubba would have felt the repercussions of that, felt the weight of that, and Bubba would have been able to continue to race this weekend." That point is interesting as well. I made this comment Tuesday, but the suspension really only hurts Bubba Wallace. It doesn't hurt 23XI all that much. Other than the PR damage that's been done, might hurt some of their relationship with sponsors, with fans, etc., etc. But as far as on the track, the 45 car is in the owner's points championship. Doesn't matter who drives that car, it just matters that the 45 is on track this weekend at Miami, and John Hunter Nemechek's going to drive it. Doesn't really matter that Bubba Wallace isn't behind the wheel, at least from a points perspective. And points, owner points at least, at the end of the year, pay the best. So Dale Jr. is both saying that, hey, a suspension maybe was too harsh, but I would have gone the harsher route of a points penalty. I can't tell exactly if Junior thinks Bubba got off light or if they threw the book at Bubba unfairly. I can't really tell exactly what Junior feels. Just sounds like he wouldn't have suspended him. He would have hit him with like a 50-point penalty or something like that, which I agree with Junior. That would have gotten the attention of the team even more so than the suspension did. But I do think the suspension still sends a very strong point to Bubba Wallace that here's a line you cannot cross. We hear it from drivers all the time. One of the worst feelings is when you see someone else get behind the wheel of your race car. And Bubba Wallace is going to have to sit on the sidelines and do just that this week. And I think that will get his attention, hopefully. So I get what Dale Jr. is trying to say there. He's got a point, but I don't think the one race suspension was necessarily the wrong call. We'll get to Kyle Petty's take in a second, but let me go back first to Dale Jr. talking about precedent. We discussed this on Tuesday, but NASCAR did not follow precedent in this case. NASCAR has been woefully inconsistent when it comes to enforcing intentional wrecking penalties over the last few years. I think suspending Bubba was the right call, but when you look at the no penalty, the no call for Carson Hocevar earlier this year, or I went back a couple years, I forgot about this incident even though it happened right in front of me in the grandstands when Christian Eckes got hooked into the wall by Ben Rhodes in a truck race at Texas. That wasn't a penalty, and that was eerily similar to what Bubba did to Kyle Larson in this case, minus the fight and stuff afterwards, or the shoving afterwards. Steve O'Donnell said earlier this week that he just wants everyone in the garage to know where NASCAR stands on these types of incidents. And while yes, the Bubba Wallace suspension does send a strong message to all the competitors, I'm not sure it's a clear message. Because we can cite multiple incidents in recent years that maybe don't quite rise to the scale or level of what Bubba Wallace did, but are pretty darn close that didn't see any penalty. So there's still an inconsistency there that NASCAR needs to get ahead of as soon as they possibly can. Next driver I want to hear from is Kenny Wallace, who posted a 9-minute video to his YouTube channel. And I just want to focus on this part where he goes back to the initial crash between Bubba and Larson, and he assigns more of the blame to Bubba Wallace than I guess I would personally.
Kyle Larson gets loose, he starts wiggling up. And he knows Bubba's kind of out there still. Not side by side, but out there, right? Kyle Larson never even breathed, maybe he breathed on, but Kyle Larson never touched Bubba Wallace. Never touched him. Bubba Wallace, on his own, decided to run his own car into the wall. After the race, Bubba does the interview and says, I don't lift for nobody. Hey, you wrecked your stuff. You ran your car into the wall.
Kenny Wallace is not wrong in this case. Kevin Harvick, a veteran driver, backed out when he saw what Larson was doing. He got to finish the race. Bubba Wallace is a bit more stubborn, but if he had chose to lift, yeah, he would have lost a spot or two, but at least he likely would have been able to continue in the race. The thing I disagree with Kenny Wallace on is I believe he's cutting Kyle Larson a bit too much slack. Larson is responsible for putting Bubba Wallace in a lose-lose situation. He made the move going into turn 3 that he knew wasn't going to stick. He washed up the track. He didn't lift. Larson had the opportunity to lift as well, but he didn't. He put Bubba Wallace in a position where Bubba had to decide, do I lift and let Larson take advantage of me and maybe just lose 1 or 2 spots? Or do I keep my foot in it, try to hold my position, and risk crashing? Kyle Larson is responsible for putting Bubba Wallace in that lose-lose scenario. Bubba, as Kenny Wallace mentions, is responsible for being too stubborn to just live to fight another day, but I think Kenny Wallace in that clip is just giving Larson a little too much credit. Bubba Wallace has every right to be upset with how Kyle Larson raced him there. That wasn't a fair or 100% clean move, so I wouldn't cut Larson quite as much slack as I think he is in that clip. The last clip I want to react to, many of you have probably seen this as well, but on NBC Motor Mouths, Kyle Petty called for a much harsher penalty than I think I've seen any other mainstream NASCAR commentators suggest.
He should have been suspended for the rest of the year.
Wow.
Rest of the year.
That is a strong take. I expect that kind of take from a YouTube comment section. I don't expect that from a produced TV or online show, but hey, go for it, Kyle Petty. He's known for some hot takes. Petty goes on to explain all the things he believes Bubba did wrong. He said, quote, "First, you intentionally wreck somebody. That's a suspension. He's walking across the racetrack and cars are going by him on both sides. That's not safe. That should be another suspension. He physically confronts a driver, shoves him. That's a physical confrontation. If I do that on the sidewalk, I'm in handcuffs somewhere." So he physically confronts this driver, shoves an official, doesn't get in an ambulance, walks back to the pits, and then he tells a fib. The lesson should be the rest of the year. Just the rest of the year. That's just me. The initial crash, worthy of a suspension, sure. Walking along the racetrack during a caution period, NASCAR certainly heavily frowned upon that in recent years. I'm not sure that warrants a suspension, but that's worthy of a talking to and perhaps a fine. The shoving Larson, NASCAR's not going to penalize that, and I don't think they should have in this case. The shoving a NASCAR official, he kind of brushed him off, shrugged him off. Yeah, it's not good to put your hands on an official, but this isn't the NBA. This isn't the NFL. Again, perhaps worthy of a fine, certainly worthy of a talking to. I don't know if NASCAR does like probation anymore. I feel like nobody gets put on probation anymore, but if they'd still have that, sure, that would be justified. To me, the crash is the only thing that Bubba did that for sure warranted a suspension in my eyes. The other stuff, not great. Say he doesn't crash. Say he just crashed normally. He didn't intentionally right rear hook Larson. He just crashed normally. He went over, fought Larson, shoved the official out of the way. I would have fined Bubba for walking on a hot track, and I might have fined him for the contact with an official. But because he crashed Larson, I think NASCAR sort of baked it all into that suspension. And I still think it's a fair penalty. So Kyle Petty has a strong take on this. I'm not sure 3 races would have been justified. Again, I know NASCAR seems to be ignoring precedent, but Matt Kenseth, who was 100 laps down and took out the race leader late in a playoff race, he got 2 races. I know that was at Martinsville, but it was still a pretty heavy impact with the outside wall. There were some safety concerns there as well. I don't see how that's a 2 race, and then what Bubba did here goes up to a 3 race. To me, that wouldn't make sense. Petty does make a good point. Crew chiefs get suspended 4 weeks for a wheel falling off. Driver right rear hooks somebody at 170 miles per hour and they get 1. He calls it bad optics. I agree. I don't think the solution is making Bubba's suspension much longer. I think a better solution would be reducing the suspension for crew chiefs, because I think all year long, 4 weeks for a wheel falling off, that's been a laughable penalty, I think, all year long. I understand the safety concerns there, but 4 weeks, plus you're suspending the tire changer, the tire carrier, or the jackman, whatever. You're suspending the better crew guys and putting in backups. How's that good for safety? I think that penalty has always been a little overboard this year. We've talked about that before. I don't think they needed to make Bubba's penalty overboard to compensate. I think just rein the other one in. But he's got a point. It's bad optics that those are so misaligned. Anyway, I think that's going to do it. Which drivers do you most agree with? Are there any quotes, comments we just heard that you disagree with strongly? Share your thoughts down in the comment section below. Now, before Homestead this weekend, I thought it would be fun to sit down with a driver who's actually competing in one of the 3 races this weekend. Lawless Alan joins the show. Let's dial him up right now. How's it going, y'all? I am now pleased to be joined by NASCAR Camping World Truck Series driver. Eventually, I'm going to have to get used to saying Craftsman Truck Series driver, but Camping World Truck Series driver, Lawless Alan. Great to have you here. I know you probably get this a million times, you're tired of it, but Lawless, that is a really, really cool name. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, just in time for Homestead. I guess this is the second to last truck series. Are y'all racing at Martinsville?
Yeah.
Second to last truck series.
Second to last
of the season. Homestead's awesome. We're gonna have to ask you all about Homestead here in just a few moments. But first off, This is your first full-time year in the truck series. So I guess what has surprised you most this year running full-time?
Probably the hardest thing to get used to is how much the trucks move around, I would say. You on TV, it looks like they're kind of planted and sealed and just turning, but there's the bodies moving in such weird ways and the air's moving them around in such weird ways that there's a lot more movement than meets the eye. So that's been what I've been really grappling with this year, I feel like.
You're part of a very young team over at Nice Motorsports this year. So as a team, I guess, how would you say your season has gone, maybe based on your expectations coming in?
It hasn't gone how I would have liked, but I hold myself to an extremely high standard. So, I mean, it's just getting seat time in it, learning it. We've had our fair share of bad luck, especially the last couple races where we've put good runs together and then something has taken us out. So It hasn't gone how I would like, but not every season is going to. So just learning as much as I can for this year to hit the ground running next year.
Have you found, because you have mostly short track experience, I don't know how much experience you had on bigger tracks before this season. I know you ran some trucks last year, I guess, but have you found that, racing at intermediates or super speedways, have you kind of gravitated towards that, or has that been like more difficult to get used to maybe than you initially expected?
The intermediates is a lot harder to get used to than I expected, because that's the one where the truck is loaded the most. You're relying on the side force the most, and the body moves the most. So everything is to the extreme there. I found comfort in tracks at like Darlington and oddly enough Kansas, because it doesn't really feel like an intermediate in terms of like it's not that high load and you just kind of run the wall. And so I've gotten to terms with tracks like that and more of the short tracks, but stuff like Texas or Charlotte is stuff I'm still getting used to. I wish we went back to a couple times so I could get multiple reps there, but I guess I'll get them next year.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Texas is a beast in itself. I don't know if anyone has a true handle of that place these days. But speaking of mile and a half, so you got a fun one coming up this weekend, Homestead Miami Speedway. I say fun because as a fan watching at home, I think it's one of the best mile and a halves on the circuit. But what are your expectations coming in, and what makes preparing for Homestead Miami Speedway such a unique challenge?
My expectations going in pretty much go no further than I expect to run the wall and probably hit it a few times as I'm coming to grips to it. But I got to run Homestead a little bit in the simulator, so I'm not going there completely blind, but I'm going in just about as blind as I can. And nobody at Nice has been there before, so we're all kind of going into this new experience together. So it's going to be weird and wild running up against the wall, just trying to figure out the timing, because it's not necessarily like line sensitive up at the wall because you're just painting it as much as you can, but it's going to be super timing sensitive. And if you lift a little too late, then you hit the fence. If you hit too early, then you're too far off the wall. So just finding that balance is going to be what's really hard, but nothing to lose. So I might as well try it. We're all probably going to hit the wall. So it's something that I'm at peace with.
Come to grips with it before the weekend even begins.
Yeah.
You bring up an interesting point. It makes me think of another question. You got some sim time, you said, before the Homestead race. But I know this year and the last couple of years, really, practice has been much more limited. For a younger driver like yourself, trying to get reps, seat time, how much of a challenge is that when you go to some of these tracks only one time a year and you only get maybe 15 minutes of practice in the real truck, on the real track? Like, how difficult is that to overcome, you feel like, someone who's still just trying to kind of come to terms and get their grips out there?
It's really difficult. I actually liked last year no practice better, because at least when we all had no practice, we were all going on the track and we were tentative together. It was a learning experience for everybody.
Interesting point. Yeah.
All right, we're not gonna go blast out there because nobody knows what the trucks are gonna do. You might slam the splitter into the floor. Who knows what would happen? But the 20 minutes, I think, puts the rookies at a real disadvantage compared to like the veterans, because it gives the veterans enough time to go, okay, I remember what this is like. I know what the truck's going to do. And now we adjust on it. And I'm sitting there eyes wide trying to figure out where I am. So I think it's set me on the back foot for sure. But it's everybody's in the same boat, so it just makes it harder. But it's the truck series, so nothing about it's going to be easy.
Trial by fire is what it sounds like in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Well, talking about Homestead once again, you've got a cool paint scheme this weekend with Auto Charge It on the hood. What can you tell us a little bit about them?
Yeah, so auto charge it is it's electric vehicle charging like solution. So instead of, let's say you need to park you need to charge 5 cars. In normal parking stalls, you'd have 5 chargers, and so it'd be 5 things. But with auto charge it, you can do like 5 cars with like 1 or 2 chargers, because it's smart and it'll charge until the one's done and then move on to the next one. So it works pretty seamlessly with the auto park it systems, where it's the fully automated parking systems that takes your car and parks it like a vending machine.
It's crazy.
So
cool.
it works. It all works pretty seamlessly together, and I'm super happy to have them on board. And they've been huge supporters of mine for my entire racing career. So, just thankful that I can go out and I get to do what I do, and without auto park it, auto charge it, auto dock it, I wouldn't be able to. So, super appreciative, and I'm hoping that I don't rub the charge it off the side at Homestead against the fence.
Yeah, got to keep that logo clean and pristine. That's awesome. Absolutely. Well, good luck this weekend, Lawless. Thanks for being on the show. We'll be watching out for you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you again to Wallace and Auto Charge It for making that interview possible. Thank you for watching. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss any upcoming videos. As always, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters as well. I truly appreciate your very generous support each and every month. Been a lot of drama this week, I know. Tomorrow we will be back with a sort of Homestead preview, kind of looking at these final 2 races of the round of 8 and discussing who the favorites are, who's trending up, who's trending down, that sort of thing. Should be a good time. I will see you all then. Have a wonderful rest of your day.